Hello, how's everybody doing today? It's 3:36 in the morning right now, so I figured we might as well make a quick chess tips video before we go to bed tonight. And I haven't been able to make a video for a couple days. I'm sorry about that. It's been pretty busy around here, but we'll go ahead and get right into it. Let's bring this up for you. Hopefully you can see that. Okay. The video today is going to be about statics versus dynamics. And if you don't know the difference between a static and dynamic advantage, well, here's what it is. If you have a static advantage, it's something that you could use at any point in the game. So maybe your opponent has a weak pawn, and that's something that you could look forward to in an endgame, possibly. You could still attack his weak pawn all the way until the very end. And that would be something that's static. It's not going to go anywhere. You're going to have it for a long time. And then when we look at the other side of that, we look at a dynamic edge. If you have something dynamic, a good example is a lead in development. A lead in development is considered a dynamic advantage because if you don't use it immediately, your opponent will eventually catch up in development and you will no longer have that advantage. So those are the difference between statics and dynamics. When you're looking at a position, you should always keep that in mind, whether the position calls for something static or dynamic. Because if the position calls for something very dynamic and you try to focus on the static weaknesses of the position, you're just going to get rolled. Because your opponent is going to realize that this is a dynamic position. And he's going to play dynamically and he's going to beat you. So here, taking a look at this position, it's white to move. And this game is actually Nespanyu versus Milov. And Vadim Milov is a famous grandmaster. He's from the US, I believe. Yeah, I'm not too sure about Nespanyu, where he's from, but he's also a grandmaster. So, just taking a look at this position here with white to move, there's a couple of things that you would have to be aware of. And we can see that this is a very dynamic position, right? I mean, we can see weak pawns everywhere. White has weak pawns on f2 and h2, and then black has weak pawns on a6, c5, and e4. But again, we can tell by the nature of this position that it's not a static position. So as white, we don't want to focus on these weak pawns in black's position, but we want to focus on some of the more dynamic features of this position. So some things that we can notice here is black's knight is pinned, right? We can see that the knight's pinned. Also, something else we can notice, if our bishop was not on h6, we could play queen h8 check and win the game immediately, right? Something else to be aware of, more tactics. Also, if we could play queen f6, we would win the knight since it's pinned. And one more thing to be aware of, white's light square bishop here on c4. It's not doing much at the moment, but we realize if we could advance with d6, this bishop would suddenly come to life on this diagonal and possibly be able to aid in the attack on the black king. So that's something else we should be aware of. So, what type of move here could address all the factors that we just talked about? The advance of d6, the queen using the h-file. Well, bishop f4, right? Bishop f4. That appears to be the move that would solve the problems there, because then we could play queen h8 check. But unfortunately, we can't play bishop f4 because he just plays queen takes f4. And then if we check him here and then take the knight, he's going to take our pawn then again on f2 check and just win our rook here. So, we would like to play bishop f4, but we can't play that move right now. But we realize that's the ideal move, so how could we make a bishop f4 in this position possible? Well, It's easy. We use our rook. So white's move here, which the Grandmaster played, rook g4. That simply prepares bishop to f4, which we know would win the game in this position, since he can no longer take. Oh. So what does black do here? Well, black went down in flames pretty quickly in this position, and he took on h2, and then after queen f6, black just simply resigned. If he plays queen takes h6, d6, and it's game over. So what could he have done instead? Well, after rook g4 in this position, there really aren't many good moves for black, honestly. If he plays, let's say, I don't know, queen b6 to try to avoid bishop f4, we just play d6. And then if bishop takes d6, queen f6, threatening mate and the knight. And if queen takes d6, yet again, we come back with bishop f4, and it's game over. So this was just a quick video on the difference between a static and a dynamic advantage. Sometimes they're both going to be there in the position. You'll have some static advantages like these weak pawns that we just discussed here. But look, as you can see, the weak pawns are still sitting there. They didn't determine anything about this game. They both were here, but the most important thing was the dynamic advantage, because this position was very dynamic. There were lots of dynamic factors. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something from it. If you liked the video, please do like it on YouTube. And hopefully you guys subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed the video. And thanks for watching, guys.